We both lived in a unholy combination of two suites connected by a fire door that we probably shouldn't have left open. It was the Welch 16-pack. In our first year, I went to Les Mis at Schubert Theater, subsidized by Davenport, of course. And after I got back from the musical, I was cornered by Kyle and asked about every single thing in the show. He asked about the music, he asked about the actors, he asked about how they handled the guy that jumps off the bridge at the end. There's certainly more. There's more to this man than his New Jersey baseball bro appearance and his soon-to-be salt and pepper hair. Seems at first sight. So at that time, Kyle was working on So Betsy, which is a musical about people writing a musical about Betsy Ross. And he wrote this musical on a tiny MIDI keyboard in the disgusting squalor of a 16-person first-year suite. But he was surrounded by people that he loved, namely two fish that were gifted to him by a wonderful suite mate. And apparently Kyle still wakes up every morning to a notification on his phone that reminds him to feed Romeo and Julian. So between then and now, Kyle has spent his time writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. He's completed 2 musicals. He's done with 1 play. He's working on a second for the creative writing concentration. He's one of those people who started a podcast during the pandemic. Not sure how I feel about that. He's written countless sketches for The Good Show. He will frequently do stand-up at the Davenport Dive whenever he's working. Keeps people as a captive audience. And somehow, throughout all this, he's found the time to take 2 young men under his wing who don't necessarily know how to cook and also don't know how to do dishes. So, what a guy. And with that, I'm going to let Kyle explain whatever is going on up here because I have no idea.
So we're actually going to continue our conversation about the Cold War now. No, we're going to be talking about something a little different. What a vibe shift. I love this school because you get things like that, incredible research, and then things like this, something else. But we're going to talk today about my works in progress and how my progress works. 30% of the reason I'm giving this presentation is because I came up with the title and it was too good to not give a presentation. The other 70% because I didn't write the most conventional thesis and wanted to be able to talk about my work and what I do in a way that I think people could relate to, but it's hard when I'm still trying to figure out how I do it myself. So my works in progress and how my progress works is about the things I've been working on, as John said, but it's also, this in and of itself is a work in progress as I try to kind of conceptualize how I creatively write, how I want to teach others to creatively write, because that is something I'm interested in down the road, and so you're my first class, in a way, and we'll see how things go. So I guess we're going to start with why I do this. Why are you an English major? Why do you write all day? Questions I ask myself, questions I ask a fair amount of you. I think last week I almost was ready to be done, but we're back doing it still. So, it's kind of been a foregone conclusion. Since I was a kid, I've been telling stories and playing music. My parents had a really fun word for these stories when I was growing up. They called them lies. I didn't realize that if I just changed the name of the character, then everyone wanted to read it. Everyone's fine, as long as it's not me pretending things about my own life. And so this is a picture of like the first big story I wrote that I was proud of, and then my mom and my brother came to like the little reading in 4th grade or whatever. And then on the music side, I fell in love with music the first time I heard Fiddler on the Roof when I was 4, for us. And I wanted to be the fiddler on the roof, a little literally, and so I tried to play the violin, but I realized I hate the violin because there are no notes. You have to, I don't know how to do it. I needed the piano that gives you where all the notes are, and so I fell in love and never looked back. And writing and creating is it's something I can't stop it even if I wanted to, and so I came to Yale being like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a way to creatively write and create music, and this school does everything in its power to not let you do that if it wants to. I dropped the music major because I didn't want to take that many music history courses in order to write a few Sibelius notes, and I had to force my way through the English major in 3 semesters to be able to finally creatively write. But I am finally allowed to creatively write, so let's now talk about what I have been writing. The big question, the what. these are my two shows that I've been working on, the two works in progress that I'm proudest of, that I want to be talking about today. They're both going up in April, if all things go according to plan here. The first, I'll talk about them in opposite order, actually. My thesis, Keep the Change, is my actual thesis. The thing I'm writing for my thesis is a play with my advisor, Donald Margulies, in the writing concentration here in the English department. It's a play about New Jersey delis and COVID, and how the people we became how we accept the people we became in the year 2020, and just kind of watching us go through COVID in a very community-oriented environment that is a deli, how our communities got ripped apart, the strains that were put on the people, that it was totally out of their control. And then my other show, no, not for a thesis, not for a grade, literally for fun, because me and my sister needed to do something, is a musical we're calling The SS Canceled. Woo! Yeah. It's a show about people who have been post-mortem canceled. It's a show about a ship that carries people who have been post-mortem canceled from heaven to hell because they can't stay in heaven anymore because they've been canceled. It's also about high school prom. There's a lot going on. We'll get into it a little more, but these are the two shows I've been writing, and I included these pictures as the shows because, like, what I've actually done is this. All I've done is put words on a page. 96 pages on that one, 111 pages on that one. They're just a lot of pages. Hey, there was a little flex, but they're just a lot of pages. They're just a lot of words. But at the same time, for an hour and a half, when all the parts are learned and everyone is speaking, it's a world. You're really living in a world for an hour and a half, and that is why I do this, because I'm just so blown away that this can become an experience we can all share. And that's what keeps me motivated. And I want to kind of break down how you get from that world, how you get to that world from. Even before you have 96 pages of a script, from nothing, from literally thoughts in your head. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be doing now. That's the what. We're going to talk a lot now about the how. So the how is kind of the heart of my presentation. And I've tried to break down the worlds by sticking very literally A to my clip art and B to my metaphors, by discussing how I kind of conceptualize my creative process. So at every creative process, if you're creating a world, if that's what you're doing, within that world there are forests, and within those forests there are trees. Every piece of art you'll ever create kind of breaks down to those three levels, or I have said that you can break them down onto these three levels. How they kind of break down is just how concrete you're getting as opposed to how abstract you're getting. When you're on that world view, when you're looking at the world of a show, you're usually dealing with a few big concepts. I call them two big things. For me, they sometimes just light like a match, and that's how you know a show is going to start. My last play was about parking lots and gambling, and that just happened to come together at the right moment, and I was like, there's my show. I'll explain my show for this one, or my process for this one in a second, but equally important is having a question. Writing for me, whether it's reflective and memorial or fiction, is very much answering a question, addressing some big concern that's weighing on my mind, and writing through it and editing it is how I kind of come to conclusions on this. I don't trust any of my thoughts or any of my words. I trust my writing, because at the end of the day, that is what I kind of believe, which is a fun way for me to live through life, but it's how I do it. Other people don't agree. That's your world, but you can't just have a world, you can't just have a show. Everyone says they want to be a playwright, and they have an idea. Everyone wants to write a movie, and they have an idea, but that is all you can have a world, but you have to create that world. And so as you go level by level, you actually start to do the work, you zoom in more. The second level is the forest. It's what is going on, what are we actually looking at, where are we? That's your who, your what, your where, your characters, your setting. Why are we looking at this point of view of this? This is our world. Why are we here right now? What are we doing? How are we going to address these questions? Who are the people that'll best address these questions? When you're working in fiction, the answers are endless. You can put anything on a page, and you can take characters any direction you want to go, but you have to decide why you're continuing to do it this way. And that is kind of it's a little more concrete than, I have an idea for a show, now I have some characters that are going to do something in a show, and I know what they're going to do. How they actually do it, how you get from what you see how you make a show actually happen, is in your trees, in your actual text, in the actual writing process of putting lines on a page, growing ideas one at a time. I like trees because it's very organic. It feels as organic as it is. You can't force trees to exist. You can't you can plant full trees in a forest, but a good forest will grow from the ground on its own, one tree at a time, because that's how it organically has to exist. And so much of my writing, I find, is relying on my writing, just trusting my own writing to tell me what the right answers are, to believe in how it's going to go. I don't know if any of that makes sense to any of you, but if it does, I think it'll be helpful to break it down through my two shows. So I'm going to walk you through the process of how I went forest, world, trees with both of my shows, because they're two very opposite processes. one of the shows was very standard, the other show couldn't have been less standard. So we'll start with Keep the Change, which was a very standard kind of world forest trees, how I would like to build a show if I had it my way every time, which I don't because it's a constant fight with my own head to figure out how this is all going to work. But in Keep the Change started at the end of my last show, actually. I knew I needed a thesis. I knew I was going to write a play for my thesis. It was the first time where I was asked to create a piece of art. At the end of something, there was going to be a piece of art that I had to produce. So I was thinking, where do I want this next show to come from? And my two big things actually came in a week, and it was a very strange week. It started because I was really angry at my dad. My last show stalled. Was in the Yale Playwrights Festival last year, but the Yale Playwrights Festival was over Zoom, and so it was like kind of a pseudo. It's a lovely festival. I recommend all of you go if you haven't been. It was just 2 weeks ago, so you missed it. But it's a great like way to show off student art. And when it was over Zoom, it just didn't have that same like joie de vivre. And so my dad kind of instead of coming to my premiere, went to my brother's like meaningless soccer game because that was in person and he could watch my show later. Totally reasonable thing for him to think, and I realized I'm not angry at him, I was angry at the pandemic, because if it wasn't for the pandemic, this fight never would have taken place. There was no point in putting anger on my dad, and this question of like, ooh, am I angry at him or am I angry at the pandemic? Did he become a new person because of the pandemic, or was it the pandemic that caused it? Was something that was really weighing on me. And I was like, oh, I might have something here. And then Mac's Public House happened. I don't know how closely you watched the news in 2020. I watched it way too closely. But my favorite story was Mac's Public House. This guy, Mac, in Staten Island, was so tired of New York's deli rules, restrictions about eating inside, that he declared his bar an autonomous zone where the government could not enter, no one could wear masks, full capacity, and it turned into mayhem. Like, there were National Guard had to come in and break up riots. It was a very strange right-wing, give me my rights moment to do whatever. It was very complicated, and it was both, because I watched my 2020 news viewing spent half my day watching CNN, half my day watching Fox News, so I would know how both sides were living. And seeing how both sides used this story it was so mind-blowing to me that I was like, we have all kind of become something new in the pandemic, but this guy especially, all he wanted to do was be a bar owner. He didn't want to be a huge political mogul of this political figure piece. He became something so different because of the pandemic that I was like, I have to sit with this. I saw that news story, I went upstairs, I outlined the whole show for like 4 hours. I stayed up until late in the night, just like I had this idea that I couldn't sit with. And then so now I have my world. I knew I wanted to write about COVID. I knew I wanted to base COVID in a deli, because a deli was going to be very community-oriented, allow me to address a lot of people in these communities from a lot of different angles. And so I was thinking, like, what kind of characters do I want to do? How do I want to build this show? And I just tried to build, I think, the most representative of a community that I could, in the least number of people, because you don't want to ever have to have more actors if you can have less when you're casting a show, because it's just more money and more people you have to pay, more coordination. So keep it as small as you can, but show off as much as you can. And I found the best way to do this was to look at it generationally. So I have one girl, Eliza, the lead, who is a 19-year-old Yale student, very much my take on my view of the pandemic. I have JR, who is this deli owner, who is trying to save his deli before COVID is starting. Very much like the economic kind of like the common man's pandemic was what I was trying to get there. The true, really difficult economic experience and the strain that you could just never have predicted for. And then at the far end, I needed one more view. I needed the old man's view, the looking back after a life lived, being kind of stuck in this position. So I remember watching my grandparents and feeling so miserable for them, but they were in such a strange place about it, and so I created Herm. And so now I had these three people who we could follow through the year. I'm starting to get my forest. I'm starting to have people. And the last thing that I didn't mention before that I want to include now, of like one more thing that you kind of need always in creating good art, is good art inspiration. Good art always is inspired by good art, and the art that I kind of was looking to, there's this play called Our Town, and this incredible quote from Our Town, where the stage manager says, like, so many years from now, people will look back and see this is how we lived, this is how we were dying at the beginning of the 20th century, because COVID is going to be memorialized in numbers, millions dead, vaccines here, political fights here, but the people that we were and everything that happened, is so complex and difficult, and for that to kind of just be forgotten by the wayside of, we don't want to think about COVID, we don't want to ever address COVID, was something I couldn't do. And so I wanted to try and address it, and so this was my attempt to address it. the opposite side of how a show can be made is the SS Cancel. The SS Cancel, instead of starting with a world, actually started with a single tree. And this is a really cool slide because it is the full growing of a tree. You see this on the left. On the left is a text exchange with my roommate Dom, who said, "You should write a sci-fi musical." And I said, "I actually have an idea." Like, "You already had one?" "No, it came to me today. You sent that text at the perfect time. I want credit." And I was just like, I wrote the first song. What happened was I wrote a song and I was like, this is going to be my next show. I have the sound of my next show, I have the tone of my next show, and this is the second to last song in a show, which is a really difficult place to start from at the very end. But I was like, somehow I'm going to have to write a show that gets me to this moment because I have this incredible moment and I want to do something with it. So like you have this text exchange with me and Dom talking about a sci-fi musical, trying to break the mold of like standard musicals. And then you have me, that same night is me just chicken scratching these like ideas of lyrics and trying to structure the song in all different parts. And then what's really cool is on the far right is the finished product of this song number 15, Me Without You If It All Ends Tonight, full sheet music, full written out. So like this is how a full tree got made. This was the production of one tree that took a lot of time to make. What's really cool is you'll see here like, actually, no, you can go to the next slide. And so yeah, I had this song and I was like, I need to put it somewhere. I was going through all my notes of show worlds that I have like ideas for because I have so many of those because what's cool is I realized I have friends who are tree people and I have friends who are world people and I am very much a world person. I'm always focused on the big, not the small. And so I had a small and I had to find a home for it. And I had this wonderful idea of a home, of the SS Cancel, of the ship that carried people from heaven to hell because they couldn't stay in heaven anymore, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so through a lot of kind of thinking, I needed one more thing. I had my one big thing, but I was like, how do I address this in a way that isn't terrible? Because no one wants to address cancel culture, especially me. I have no real point to have a say on cancel culture unless I make it something that I can really speak to. And that was kind of I realize is the 18-year-old male experience of trying to deal with this world that is very foreign to us and that is very difficult to navigate for someone who is only 18 and from a small town in New Jersey and doesn't know anything. And so I created that. I created a high school prom that would kind of frame this show using my art inspiration for this show as The Wizard of Oz because everyone loves a good framing device that makes everything. If you only watch the middle portion of The Wizard of Oz, it is a very sad show about not believing in government at all. But once you get the frame on the outside and you get your beautiful little Dorothy story and it's all about her, it's a much more approachable topic, which is exactly what we tried to do at the SS Cancel, frame it in a much more enjoyable, fun, very goofy way. So it's all about high school prom. There are no real stakes. It took us 19 months, I think, to find what we actually wanted, and we're still struggling. Like, this show has taken forever to try and write because there's so many elements that take a lot of hard work. My sister is a trooper for putting up with me through all of it, but it takes forever to write a show like this. Keep the Change, on the other hand, I wrote in 12 days. I can't say how, I got COVID and just had time, but it came to me all at once, and that's the cool process about creative writing, is it can take 19 months or it can take 12 days, and both work. Playwriting is a little different than musical writing. Musical writing, you have to sing when songs are earned, speak when only spoken is necessary in a play. I try to capture reality. That is kind of what I go for. I like to capture these real moments and these real conversations, and what I wanted to do, how I do that, is through my second important literary theory, good tennis. I'll only speak briefly on good tennis because it's very underdeveloped and new, but good tennis kind of started from the idea that you can walk into you can observe any conversation at any time and draw a tennis net. There is always a cadence of a ball being thrown back and forth, bounce, hit, between how a conversation should go. Everyone knows bad tennis players who just stand at the net and whack back and forth. There are some people who stand deep and just play nice and easy tennis and just ask questions who are so fun to talk to. I can extend this metaphor forever. There is wee tennis, which is just bad conversations that feel like it's nice and easy, where there's a language barrier, where there's a puddle on the court, and all of a sudden you can't get through it. This metaphor goes forever. What you have to know is, I think all the time about tinkering good conversations to make them make a lot of sense, so that people are playing good tennis, unless I want them to be playing bad tennis. All that really matters is that when you're creating conversations, it's so much about listening to the conversations you see and feeling the what's behind the conversations, because it is so much more than just the words on the page always. And that's what's really cool about playwriting, is you only get the words on the page, but you have to create everything more than the words on the page. And so I wanted to show you two trees from Keep the Change that show very unique tennis, because obviously, like, there are good conversations. There are, I think, good conversations in the show and some bad conversations in the show. But these are two. When I was writing, there are unique to 2020 moments. Because of mask wearing and because of everything that was going on, I had some really fun, like, areas to play with and how conversations are going to play out. And so this was probably my favorite exchange in the whole show. Is Eliza, this daughter, is yelling at her dad. She's furious at him, and in the middle of the conversation, she yells like, "Don't try to make excuses for him." And he's like, and she yells, "Will you please, for the love of God, put on a goddamn mask?" And in that moment, it's such a crazy, like, in the show, it's all it is someone putting on a mask, but like, the implications behind that of just like not trusting you versus trusting you, and what it does to your face when you're literally masked. It was like there is so much here to work with that I got to play with in writing this show that I just kind of wanted to bring to your attention as you think of your own trees and tennis nets and conversations that you can build. And then on the other side, one of the other kind of really fun out there elements of the show that isn't standard is, like I said, I spent a lot of time watching both Poppy Harlow and Tucker Carlson tell me what is supposed to be going on in the world during 2020. Neither of them ever overlapped, like, in the slightest. It was crazy. It was two Americas. And I wanted to see what would happen if you had to force those two Americas to be on the same stage at the same time. So I took, essentially, Tucker Carlson and Poppy Harlow, named them Holly Pemberton and Crick Jenkins, and had them give the news at the exact same time to the same audience. And so they're not even playing tennis. One is just hitting the ball this way, one is just hitting the ball that way, and they just go back and forth having these like ridiculous, not exchanges because they're each giving the news, but it's very like back and forth, and so this is a really fun one. But that is like, I don't know, I think so much about conversations and how they're working, both in reality, because it's so weird that you can't edit conversations that I can then go and tinker on for months if I want to, and like the differences that has, but how you have to make it sound like a real conversation. I can go forever. I won't. What's the next slide? Yeah, what's really fun is these shows take a lot of work. One thing I didn't mention before is that after I fell in love with The Fiddler on the Roof, my sister and I put on a full production of The Fiddler on the Roof in our living room for our entire family, where I played Tevye and she played all the other parts. Yeah, and then a week ago a few weeks ago now, for our second workshop of the SS Cancelled, we did it once again in our living room, except this time she played Eva and I played all the parts, which was this really cute moment that we got to have. These are like kind of fun artistic moments that happen in like real moments in the art room, but no, yeah, it takes a ton of time to make a good product. You only usually see the final one, but it takes a ton of time and a ton of really kind of niche work. This is a text exchange with my mom about my professor not really getting the vision of my play. Whatever. He wasn't as on board the second time, but it's fine. That's most of my, how am I doing on time? I would love to play for you the opening number of my musical, if you guys would indulge me. Is there one more slide? Because I think I added the lyrics. Good, there are lyrics already on there, look at that. So this is the opening number of my show. At this point, we're in the high school world. This is Neil, our main character. This high school boy is trying to navigate his reality as he graduates and goes off into the real world. I'm gonna play all the parts again. I'll just kind of read through them because it's gonna transition into high school and it's gonna get very confusing possibly, but I hope you like it. This is what I've been working on for the last 18 months. I don't know. Whatever. Alright. Yeah, this is how we're gonna do it. Can everyone hear me? Alright. Yeah, there are multiple people singing this song, so it's just gonna be what it's gonna be. I hope you enjoy the music at least. So Neil's mom, his alarm goes off first thing in the morning, and he's like, and his mom's like, wake up, and he's like, I'm not up, and she's like, get ready, and he's like, I don't want to, and she's like, well, get ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for a change, slow and steady. I'm not looking for life to rearrange, so no, I'm not through birth thrilled with and in high school. This whole thing's got me feeling really strange. Overthinking, pull yourself together, man, you're not sinking. have the perfect plan, be the guy everyone likes, but keep your distance. Always take the path of least resistance. I go through every day with the same routine, always keep it clean, whoa. That's how it's going to stay, even when school ends at 3. Oh, end of the world, but will that hold up when it's time to go? Will my life be as remarkable as me? And then it transitions to high school, and everyone's like, hey Neil, what's going on? And he's like, take a picture with me for Instagram. And Neil's like, I hate this, everyone here is I'm so ready. I'm so ready for a change, going steady. Something, I forget the words, no, go and just wait and see, may not know exactly where I'm going. I wanna be remarkable, but I'll discover who I wanna be. I'm gonna make my escape, graduation day can't come soon enough, whoa. That life will start taking shape, that's a simple guarantee. They love to be, they're very active and going for the world. Will my life be as remarkable as Evangeline? Neil spots his love interest. You're a light in the darkness. Oh, Evangeline, how I wish that you knew. It was very awkward to sing this to my sister. I'm only 18, but I can say with starkness that I'd spend my life with Evangeline, 'cause I'm in love with... And then he gets cut off and he gets into this big fight and he's like way too nervous to say anything because that's who he is and that's kind of how the whole show works. And then he sings this final sad, I go through every day with the same routine, always keep it clean, whoa. Watch how it's going to stay, even when school ends at 3. There I'm the king of the world, but will that hold up when it's time to go? I want my life to be remarkable. Get ready, world, you don't know what is coming. I hope my life's as remarkable as me. As me. As me. Whoa. As me. Thank you. Yeah. So that is a taste of how this show works. It's a lot about teen angst and like understanding where we are in the world. But that is the opening number. Thank you guys so much for listening and indulging my mayhem of a presentation. I guess if you have any questions, I can answer them, hopefully. But thank you guys so much for listening. Olivia? Oh man, I despise TikTok as a place. I really actually, my true opinion is I really don't like what it does to content, because it makes people work really hard for kind of no reward, and that reward is so flash in the pan that even if you get it, you can't sustain it. It's really interesting to see TikTokers like blow up for one thing and then try to stick to that, like do that one thing, and then there's always like video 30 where they're like, so now I'm gonna explain about myself and my other passion, and the viewers are like, we don't care, because it is such a singular creative focus. So no, I use TikTok as a place to say the absolute worst of things, and that is it. But yeah. Mellon.
So the 12 days versus 19 months, I've never had that big of a spread, but I have sat for many, many hours in Sterling, bashing my head against the wall, not being able to write, which analytically is very different than creatively. So when everything's going horribly wrong, how do you try to reset? What has worked for you and what hasn't?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I have found that what I have to do, because usually it's in the drafting process. Like the writing is always the drafting process for me. And the answer I have always found is just plow forward, put anything on a page, because having anything that I can work back from, I think I'm a better creative editor than I am a creative writer. And so if I have things to look at and I can be like, oh, I see how this is wrong, that is a lot easier of looking at trees and being like, I can prune these, than being like, I have no idea what I'm dealing with. There's a moment in SS Cancel, or in Keep the Change, I don't know, there it is. There's a moment in this show, if you look at the character list, where this really weird thing happens. There's a giant fucking sandwich that's just going to appear as a character, because I got to a point in my show where I truly had nowhere to go. I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I can take, I don't know what the right direction is to take this world. Let me plow forward with one idea. And this one idea turned out to kind of like define the second half of the show in a really, I think, effective way. And so, for me, it's always knowing I am the only audience of my draft. I need to write anything. No one is going to see this. This is just so I can get somewhere else. Is such a helpful thing to any type of writing you're doing. If you ever have a chance to, if it's not last minute writing where it is like, this is the one thing I'm writing, is the one thing that's going to be submitted. If you have a chance to check it over, reminding yourself, I have time, I am the only one who's seeing this, this is for me, this is not the final product, it doesn't have to be perfect, it has to be there so I can work on it more, is the way I get through all of those very tough times when I really can't write anymore. It's just plow through with something, knowing it's not going to have any, doesn't matter, I just need something so I can keep working, and that's kind of how I get around that. Yeah.
I want to know more about what your favorite types of characters to write are. Not the easiest, but your favorite ones that reflect you, or ones that you get to explore the perspectives.
Ooh, okay. Cool. My director for my thesis, Ava Magyar, Davenporter, stud. One of the first things she said about my play is, there is not a single fully likable character in this show. And that was the best advice, that was like the best comment I could have gotten, because I work really hard to create characters and then let them write themselves. It sounds like cheesy and very like writery, but I definitely, as I'm writing my scenes, I'm like, no, Eliza wouldn't say that. It's crazy how when I get to the end of my show, I have to go back and always rewrite the first few scenes, because I didn't know what their voices were at this point. I didn't know who they were. And so I'm working with these ideas of like, I know what she wants, I know what she doesn't want, I know what she doesn't want people to know, I know what she does want people to know, because those are like the 4 big questions I ask myself when I'm writing anything. No, I love writing villains, because I love to find sympathy in villains, and I love writing heroes to find problems in heroes. So it's always, I love to find, like, finding just the human part of every character is what I love the most. Side characters are more fun to write because they're comedy, usually. They're just there for jokes.
Thank you so much. I have a question about, the ideas you've had in the past, and I'm sure as a serial storyteller, you've had some ideas that you tried to write and failed to really find an amazing story. Do you ever come back to those ideas and really make a success out of them?
I think right now I'm finding myself building up ideas much faster than I can write. Once I kind of start on a project, I lock myself in as the creative work I'm going to do is on this project. This was really hard because I was working on 2 shows at the same time, and compartmentalizing energy for both of them was really weird, which is I think part of why I wrote it so fast, was just to get it done, get it out there, so I can kind of put my attention back here. But no, I have 7 movies down the line that I want to have written. There's one that I started a while ago that I never know if I'm going to get to. I hope they turn into successes. There's a world where So Betsy gets brought back in some crazy reality and we have to deal with that show again. I agree. Probably never. But no, there are tons of ideas I never get to write. I assume it's kind of like how, if an idea is important enough, it'll come back to you. I assume if a show is good enough, I will pick it up again and try and write it. So, yeah, not yet. The Urban Outfitters musical that I want to write one day will eventually come to fruition. Is that?
How do you know when the show is finished?
It's never finished. It's finished when it goes up, because it's actually my advisor, it's his rule, and I'm going to stick with it, I think, for my life, is that you can work on a show until the minute lights up on opening night, and then that is it set in stone there as your piece of art at that point in your life. Because he's I can go back and edit things I wrote 20 years ago, but that's doing a disservice to 20-year-old me who wrote it at that time. And I really like that approach of seeing these pieces of art not only as they're never going to be finished. I could tinker forever. And so putting a finished date as this is when I'm done with it, because it has to be, is super helpful to you as like seeing a product of your past, of like this is where I was at in my creative career here, and that's so cool, I think. Yeah.
Awesome presentation, King.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Which is like actually kind of tied back to Mellon presentation too. Big one. Nancy Reagan. Does she have a ticket to the SS canceled or not?
Wow. What was her rep when she was dying? Is she still popular enough?
I don't know.
I'll have to look into it.
You know her reputation. I don't know the reason I should know.
Ooh, I actually think totally. Yeah, I think so. I think she totally could be. Right now it's, yeah, no, we can make that. It's not going to be in the show. We can make it work in the world. Haha, look at me.
She calls Hillary Clinton a witch. That starts.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it.
That's
That'll do it. Yeah, thank you guys so much.